My name is Teresa Moulton. I am the editor-in-chief of the Change Management Review, and we're here with the friendly Paul Sherman of Ask What Matters, and we're here to talk about integrating well-being into your change management strategy. And to start with that, I'd just like to let you know why this topic came up and why it's really important to me. But before I do that, I want to introduce Paul properly and make sure that you have a good sense of who he is and why we chose him as the well-being person to come and talk about this topic.
A proper introduction. Oh my gosh.
A proper introduction.
All right, I'm getting ready for my proper introduction.
Okay, so Paul Sherman, co-founder of Ask What Matters, a coaching and training company dedicated to individual, team, and organizational performance. For more than 30 years, he has served individuals and organizations around the world, including Fortune 500 businesses, large and small, not-for-profits, faith and community-based institutions, colleges and universities, and government agencies. Paul holds a summa cum laude degree in psychology from Harvard University, a master's in human resources education from Boston University, and is a certified professional coactive coach. In 2016, he co-authored the book, Ask What Matters, A Practical Approach to Your Total Well-Being. Paul lives in Palm Springs, California, with his two rescue dogs, Monty Hall and Willy Wonka. So welcome, Paul. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Awesome. So back to the story on why I thought Paul was and well-being was a really important strategy for us to have with our change management work. One of my clients, Beaverbrook Art Gallery, was going through a business transformation, and their culture after COVID was fearful, frustrated, overworked, angry, and ready for turnover. People were basically very touchy, breaking down in their cubicles. There was no patience for anything. Everyone was talking about burnout, and I knew this because I had done a set of interviews with everybody in the organization. Managers were arguing in front of staff. Staff was depressed and overworked and felt like there was no hope. I was brought in with a colleague to do a business transformation project, and I started asking myself, was the gallery going to make it? Could its culture withstand the lack of trust between the staff and its leadership? Will there be enough expertise here to complete the transformation? I knew we had to create something different for the change management strategy. I knew that we had to reach the people first to let the steam off the pot so that they can function well enough to take in the vision of the future. The solution was to bring in a well-being journey for them upfront in the change process and to position it as an acknowledgement from the organization that things have been rough and that it cares enough to invest in the staff before making change happen. The rest of the story will be told by the CEO Executive Director, Tom Smart, who joins us via video recording right now.
First, they were skeptical, Terry, and I think you saw that too.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Here's another strategic plan element or something that may or may not be that work. But working with Ask What Matters helped us to really get to the nub of the issues, interaction, behaviors, relationships in the organization, and to find out how they can be best, what's the word? How can they be best established so that everybody is feeling safe, everybody's feeling well, everybody's functioning at their highest level, and the conflict when it comes up can be easily diffused through some kind of negotiated procedure or some kind of negotiated understanding. So they Ask What Matters with Paul. He asked some questions that really I talked to Terry about, really kind of got some of the staff members really thinking deeply, not only about their relationship to the employer, to the Beaverbrook Art Gallery, but to to their families, to their loved ones, to their friends, to the community. And I was actually surprised at, first off, Paul and Terry and Nicole's light touch could have ignited such a fundamental shift or a fundamental change of thought in some of the staff members.
And what do you think the biggest benefits were with the organization from going through the well-being journey?
Well, it depersonalized some of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through change and things are not firing the way you would like them, you immediately point to somebody or something and say, well, that's the problem. Well, in some cases, yes, there were some structural or organizational issues that we had needed to address.
Mm-hmm.
But started to say it isn't entirely that, it wasn't entirely that person, it wasn't entirely that department, it wasn't entirely that client, that in fact, maybe it's me as well. And ask what matters and make decisions about your own personal well-being, but make decisions on how your contribution to the organization actually advances, in a very small sense, the business of the organization, but also advances some kind of social contract that an art gallery has with its community. So those were that was kind of a tangible but unforeseen good consequence of going through this process. Is it the blaming was calmed down.
Mm-hmm.
I think also there's more of a sense now that you own the solution to the solution is not going to be externally and brought down upon you, but you are the author of the solution, working alongside your colleagues. So there was, kind of a managed change process, and a fundamental change, and also a structural change.
Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul to give you a sense of what the program looked like and its application to some of the change management concepts as we go through his program. It's just a short version of it. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you a framework where in the change management methodology, where we mapped in some of the well-being concepts.
Thanks, Terry. And again, good morning, good afternoon to you. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to bring you back to November of 2012. It was a beautiful sunny day in Boston. I sat in the waiting room at Boston's Beth Israel Hospital, awaiting the results of my MRI. Now, for the past several months, I had ignored all the warning symptoms: the numbness in my hands, the tingling in my feet, the excruciating pain in my neck. So in walks my doctor, Dr. Ronthal, and he says to me, Mr. Sherman, you're just one fender bender away from becoming a quadriplegic. And he showed me that. Right then and there, it was what I call a stop and ask moment. The following week, I underwent emergency neck surgery. This was my fourth burnout, and this one had resulted in dire physical consequences. I could no longer ignore my well-being. That was in 2012. Well, the first couple of months of 2013, there's yours truly, sitting on the couch, eating bonbons, watching Oprah. And you can only eat so many bonbons and watch Oprah for so long. And you get to thinking, what was I thinking? Well, for me, this far no further. I needed to be able to do my profession, but do it in such a way that was sustainable. So this would never happen. There was not going to be a fifth burnout. At the same time, I was looking around me in the world, family, friends, clients, and seeing that living in the 21st century introduced so many stressors, and the people who work in organizations were under even more stress. From a personal standpoint, I never wanted anybody to experience what I did. So at that point, I decided that I wanted to integrate into my coaching and consulting methodologies. I'd always been a leadership development coach, an OD person. I decided that I wanted to actively integrate well-being into my methodologies. So what did I do? Did a ton of research looking at different human development methodologies, and I cast a really wide net. You see some of them on the screen here. Some of the traditional ones, positive psychology, neuroscience, but then looking at some others, Eastern philosophies, 12-step programs, anything that would holistically help a human being to be at their very best. The result of that work was the Ask What Matters framework for total well-being. I'll be getting a little bit more into the framework as we go into the session, but I wanted to give you a visual depiction of it for the start. In 2016, as Terry mentioned, my partner and I, David Garton, wrote the book, Ask What Matters, A Practical Approach to Your Total Well-Being. And what the book does is it's a walkthrough of this methodology. Over the past 9 years since I've been in this line of well-being work, thousands of employees have been through this methodology worldwide from organizations of all walks of life. And what I want for you today is to experience a sample of what the methodology looks like so that you can look at how might you incorporate some of these methods into your change management practices. So I'm going to give you a felt experience of some of the exercises. And what I'll be doing also is I'll step out of your experience and comment along the way around the rationale for using these particular methods at the specific points within your change process. So fasten your seatbelts and put yourself in the shoes of a client going through this particular process. So what do we mean by well-being anyway? Well, many of us have heard of wellness programs, smoking cessation, how many steps am I doing, diet. Wellness is a very mainstream thing in organizations. Well-being. Well-being is fundamentally, holistically, you as a human being at your very best. Mentally, emotionally, a physical state where you are at your most grounded. Metaphorically, I like to think about when your well-being is high, that you're the leader of your life. You're not reacting to the world around you, but you're grounded and making active choices around what you're doing on a daily basis that are not stress-driven choices. Research out of Gallup, University of Michigan, and a host of other organizations boils well-being down to three main elements. There are others, but these are the top three that we focus on in this methodology. First one, purpose, also known as career well-being. What's purpose? Is what I do on a daily basis, does it have meaning for me? Health, do I have the energy to accomplish what it is that I've set out as my goals? Health, energy. Connection. Connection. Do I have the relationships in place that feed my emotional, my mental, and my spiritual health? As an aside here around this connection piece, incidences of depression and anxiety are up 400% since the start of the pandemic. Why? Because people's needs for social connection have not been met. It's a basic rung on Maslow's hierarchy, belonging. So that's a primer on what we mean by well-being. Now, what's the antithesis of well-being? It's stress. I'm going to invite you all to do an anonymous poll right now. And the poll is asking you the question, how often do you experience what you to be considered an excessive level of stress in your life? Again, this is an anonymous poll, and please go ahead and vote. Votes are coming in. I love it when everyone participates. This is great participation in this. Fantastic. I'm going to give you another moment, and then I'm going to close up the poll. There's last minute votes coming in. And here we are. 31% several times a week. 38% several times a month. Oh my gosh. That person never, I'll have what you're having. Wow, never. Now, what I want to say in terms of normative data, you're all above the norm in terms of negative impact of stress on your life. Okay, so you're less stressed out than the rest of the world. Now, why do we do this? I'm going to step out of you and your experience, and I'm going to make a comment on why we do this as part of a change experience. What it does is it normalizes. It says to people, you are not less than, you are not alone. So what it does is it normalizes that stress is part of things, and it creates a community whereby people can say, I want to support my colleagues through their stressful times. So it builds community and it normalizes stress. Now, it's not surprising that stress levels are as high as they are. Why? American Psychological Association tells us that 70% of Americans are regularly experiencing symptoms of stress. As I mentioned earlier, I've done this work globally, and globally, my clients tend to agree with this result. This is the empirical result that I use. Why is that the case? I want to draw a metaphor for you. If you're as old as me, you recognize that DOS-based computer, everybody? I wrote my senior honors thesis on one of those. Now, what would happen? This is running a DOS operating system. What would happen to this computer if you tried to run, we're on Zoom today, if you tried to run Zoom or Netflix or any of the gaming technologies that your kids might be using, what would happen to this computer if you tried to run those applications on this computer? Go into the chat. Barb says it would blow up. Kendra says smoke and flames. Other responses into the chat. What would happen to this computer? Oh my gosh, Catherine, the blue screen of death. Leanne says it won't load. Absolutely. Yeah, unresponsive. This does not compute. This is what would happen to that computer. Now, metaphorically, human beings have an operating system. This is a DOS operating system. In today's world, we have our Mac OS, we have Windows, we have an upgraded operating system for our computer that runs these more sophisticated programs. Guess what, folks? Our human operating system is a DOS-based operating system trying to run complex programs. And I want to invite you all into the chat and think about and share with us what's overloading your human operating system. Please go ahead into the chat. Things that are overloading your human operating system. Competing priorities. Thanks, Kendra. Inflation, yes, Stacy, absolutely. The external environment of inflation and cost, so much to do in so little time. Thanks, Barb. It's overloading. Mental load of balance. Oh my gosh. Work, parents, finances. Chris, family schedules, Jennifer, work expectations. Naomi, so much news. Yes. Oh my gosh. Balance, absolutely, Ursula. Unexpected and unplanned for crises. Okay. Responsibility of balancing every day and these things. So we do this with the clients and actually have a conversation. After we talk about the level of stress, we talk about the human operating system. And again, it normalizes all of the things that are happening. Now, if you add, Amy, adulting, I like that. So imagine that. Think about your change initiatives and put into the chat, if you put yourself into the shoes of one of your clients experiencing a change initiative, in addition to all of the things that you've just come up with here, what are some additional stressors that get put on people in a change initiative? Amy says adopting new tech. Amanda shares concerns about job security, fear of losing your job. Kendra, new roles process. Leanne, stakeholders are unhappy. Learning new, loss. So imagine everybody, threat to authority. So imagine, and this is where Tom, the fellow who's the director earlier in this process, this is where sponsorship is critical. What we did with this client is, with the sponsor sitting in the room, talked about all of this, all of the life stressors and all of the added stressors, so that there was a transparent conversation where the sponsor of the initiative could show empathy with their stakeholders, with their employees, and know that we're all in this together. And not the fact these things are, they're in the environment. They're not going away. None of inflation isn't going away. Mandates aren't going away. Where our mandates aren't going away. But the thing about it is society has continued to become more, somebody says, not clear why we're a DOS operating system. People grow. Yes, and I hope I've grown, Leanne, absolutely, since 1985. Certainly have. Here's the situation though. What's different now from maybe from 1985? Back in 1985, I don't think I saw this many kinds of lettuce in my grocery store. When I was a kid, we had iceberg. Do you know how many kinds of liquid Tide there are? 12. How many cable stations? When I was a kid, we had ABC, NBC, CBS. Now, hundreds. What's different from 1985 is that we are on information overload. Our brains, there's been more information created in the past 5 years than all of human history combined. We are on overload. So day-to-day living in the 21st century is more challenging than it's ever been. And then you add on top of that change, a change initiative. No wonder people are burning out and imploding. So the methodology here, as a practitioner, you get to have a very real human conversation with your sponsor present about the stressors that people are undergoing. You've created a burning platform for why well-being. So there is a solution. This is a very simple framework for, it's a set of practices. The Ask What Matters methodology is a set of 5 practices and 5 mindsets. Got 2 hands, 5 and 5. The practices: stop and ask, reach in, reach out, plan and act. Those are the doing of the Ask What Matters framework. The mindsets of the Ask What Matters framework. I like to think of the mindsets as the rocket fuel, that if you fuel each of those practices with these mindsets, the practices become even that much more powerful. Our 5 practices, by the way, from positive psychology. Everything that I'm doing here with you today is research-based. And positive psychology tells us that if we take on a mindset of gratitude, self-honesty, curiosity, kindness, and humor, that our overall well-being stays at, that we build up a reserve of well-being in our systems. I want to walk you through, and we'll see how we do with time. I'm going to take you through as many of these practices as I can, but I also do want to leave time for Q&A at the end. So again, what you're getting a sampling of, the same way that you just had a sampling of that stress methodology discussion, I'm going to give you a couple of these other methodologies. And you would get into these other methodologies after you have had the discussion of stress, okay? Our first practice, stop and ask. Stop and ask is a practice of getting people in the habit of asking themselves two questions. What matters to me? And how much am I living in alignment with what I say matters to me? Why are those two questions? What do those have to do with well-being? There's research out of Carnegie Mellon University that says that when we're even aware of what matters to us, cortisol and adrenaline, which are our fight or flight chemicals, they are mitigated just by our having a mental awareness and consciousness of what matters. Sounds so simple, right? But again, with the information overload, this model is nothing more than a consciousness model. This whole model is about going to the mental gym. So an exercise that you get to do with your clients after the stress exercise is a simple exercise. You have a discussion, and I'm going to have you all do this in the virtual chat. What matters to you? Go into the chat and share with us what matters to you. Kendra says time with family. Ariana says the family, the dog, my community, family, job security, time with friends and vacation time. Making a contribution, Kendra says. Family, inner peace, Rebecca, thank you. Leanne, physical time. Stacy, internal peace, truly enjoying life. Amanda says purpose in your work. And coming back to that well-being pillar that we talked about before. Marissa, providing for the three boys a foundation of capability, time with family, friends, self-care. Simplicity, Mohammed, thank you, of balancing life's work. Imagine having this dialogue with your stakeholders, with your sponsor present. That's the magic elixir here, everybody. Sponsorship in this dialogue is absolutely critical. Thank you, Rebecca. I love all this. This is a beautiful thing. Career self-care bar, but absolutely. So what we do, what we're teaching here is the stop and ask practice. We're teaching a skill for people to regularly ask themselves what matters. And here's the thing. There's your big stop and ask, what matters to me in life? But there's also your little stop and ask. When you wake up today, what matters to me? So we're teaching people on a dual level to stop and ask. The big stop and ask and the little stop and ask. And how do those little stop and asks feed the big stop and ask? Now, one of the things that we then do is say, let's take this stop and ask practice to the next level. And I'm going to introduce to you one of my core stop and ask tools, which is called the Ask What Matters Wheel of Life. In a moment, I'm going to put a link into the chat, and you're going to be instructed to fill out on, and again, this is confidential. No one's going to see this but you. I'm going to have you identify 6 areas of your life that matter to you. Now, we did a little bit of a warm-up when we did the thing in the chat just now. Here are some prompts in case you want some help, but you can put anything you want in here. I'm right now in Palm Springs. I'm looking at the mountains. I could put into this, the mountains matter to me. Anything that is going to ground me in whatever grounds me, that's what I'm going to put here. You're going to put in your what matters statements, and what you're then going to do is hit the next button. What you're going to then do is highlight on a scale of 0 to 10. Here are your what matters items. On a scale of 0 to 10, this matters to me very little, all the way up to this is off the charts matters for me. You'll notice you don't have to force rank these things. So here we have 3 different 10s. So your first thing is, how much does it matter? You're then going to hit the next button again. Up will pop your what matters items. And you're going to do a second rating. How much am I living it? How much time, energy, and effort am I putting into what I say matters to me? When you hit the next step again, you will have a visual depiction of your Ask What Matters wheel of life. On the external perimeter, you'll have, and by the way, this is a sample, so this is some of the common ones we get: health, family, career, finances, community. We'll have you end up with a visual depiction. Here's how much it matters to me, and here's how much I'm living it. So I'm going to have you all do that. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to do this activity. Take it as far as you can in that 4 minutes. If you don't finish, don't worry about it. You can have access to this after the fact. If you finish before 4 minutes, oh, Naomi, I'm glad you're excited about this. If you finish before the 4 minutes, here are some reflection questions for you. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into the chat. If anybody has trouble, some people may have firewalls that are preventing them to get to this. If that's the case for you, pull out a piece of paper and draw this circle. And I'm going to go ahead and start the 4-minute clock. And we're halfway through our 4 minutes. And we have 1 more minute. Don't worry about stressing out. Get as far as you can with it. And wherever you are, you're fine. Oh, well, I'm going to ask. So Catherine says, big aha moment. I'd like to invite everybody into the chat and share one word that describes your reaction to having done the Ask What Matters Wheel of Life. One word. Kendra says misalignment. Sheila says dissonance. Christine says truth. Carla, revealing. Realization, Calliope, thank you. Mohammed says shocked. Validating, Melissa, great, thanks. Amanda, unexpected. Good reminder, Amy. Interesting. Clarity, B, thank you. Validation, revealing. Interesting, Naomi, with an exclamation point. And thank you. Marching orders. Oh my goodness. And work to do. Yes, Marissa. Here's the thing. When we do this activity with our clients, you get usually one of two kinds of responses. You get a happy response, or you get a judging response. One of the things that tanks well-being, that our research tells us, is that self-blame and blaming others tanks well-being. So if you're sitting there pointing a finger at yourself going, oh my gosh, my priorities are all messed up, or I'm not doing it the right way, or whatever. When you judge yourself, guess what? That tanks your well-being. When you observe, isn't that interesting? I wonder why that's the case. That's one of the reasons that curiosity is one of the Ask What Matters mindsets. When we look at the world through a curious lens as opposed to a judgmental lens, and judging, I do this with lawyers a lot. And the lawyers always say, but we're supposed to judge. And what I say is there's a difference between judging something and being discerning. Look at the energy behind those two different kinds of energy. This is the kind of conversation that we end up having with the clients. Now, some clients, which I love it when they do it, will share their wheels and they'll have a conversation about what's going on their wheels. That vulnerability, and in a change initiative, trust is so important. And this is all a form of vulnerability to show what your wheel is. This is Margaret, who is in one of my workshops. And you see what's on her Ask What Matters wheel. And she looked at this and she said, oh my gosh, my family is at a 10 and I'm living it at a 5. I'm a horrible mother. That's the place she went to. Oh my gosh, look at how messed up this is. No, Margaret, it's not messed up. My health matters to me at an 8. I'm living it at a 5. No, you're not messed up. This is the current state. This is what is right now. There is no bad. There is no such thing as a bad Ask What Matters wheel. This is a consciousness raising tool. For the sake of, here's the thing, the storms, one of my favorite quotes, you can't wait for the storm to pass. We have to learn how to dance in the rain. Your external circumstances are never going to change. It's this change initiative today. It's another one tomorrow. The circumstances aren't going to change. What do we get to do here, though? As a team, we get to talk about How sustainable is it for our health to be tanking? What do we need to do to support one another so that our health is better? Somebody in the client group that Terry and I just worked with at the gallery, there are people who are at different levels with their wheel. There were some people who were in urgent situations, who as a result of this workshop, basically needed to take some time off. That's not a bad thing. Not everybody isn't in dire straits. There were some people who were feeling really on their game, and they were there to bring their resilience to others. So fundamentally, what this whole methodology is about with your clients is having conversations. Non-judgmental, observable conversations. And what we say is that in the Ask What Matters methodology, what am I choosing? And yes, in Margaret's case, she actually went home, had a conversation with her family. She was on a high career trajectory. She went home, they had a family conversation. And she said, folks, I realized that you all matter to me at a 10 and I'm living you at a 5. I'm on a path of, I'm on a career progression path. I'm choosing this right now. Are we cool with that as a family? This is what happens. We get to live holistically in the 21st century. And COVID certainly was an accelerant for being able to starting to bring some of these personal conversations both into the workplace and at home. It's not taboo, folks. And Tom, the fellow who spoke at the beginning of this video, he talked about his personal trials and tribulations of what he had gone through in his career. So we look at the storm and the storm not going to pass, external circumstances, the change initiative, the economy, the war in the Ukraine, strife and dissension, my elderly parent, my drug-addicted child, all external circumstances, my internal circumstances. How is it that I'm responding to all of those things as opposed to reacting to all of those things going on for me? This is about going to the mental gym. How do we learn how to manage our internal circumstances? And that's the point of the Reach In method. Reach In is fundamentally about taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And one of the exercises that we do with our clients, I'm not going to have you do it today so that I can get through as many practices as I can. But after looking at our wheels and having that discussion, we have a conversation. And we ask people, what do you do? What are your reach-in practices that keep you healthy, body, mind, and spirit? Some of the favorites that I've heard: hula hooping, adult coloring books, hiking, painting, Pilates. People use, and what happens is people start helping one another to come up with sustainability tools. So we do that as a brainstorming exercise. And we also do this, we laugh about this and say, okay, if I'm in 100, I put out there on the table, we're all in 100% choice about what we do in the world. Yeah, right. That's not the case. Why isn't it the case? Because our minds won't let us do that. Just for the heck of it, how many thoughts do you think that the average human being has on any given day? Just put it into the chat. Kendra says 20,000. This is an ungraded quiz, everybody. 100,000, Chris says. Ursula says millions. Barb says millions. Amanda says too many. Infinite. Answer to our thing, it is 60,000 thoughts a day. What percentage of those 60,000 thoughts do you think are negative? Percentage of those 60,000 thoughts that are negative. Kendra, you got it. 70%. Here's why. 70% of our 60,000 thoughts are negative because this gets back to our DOS operating system. our reptilian brain is programmed. Back in caveman times, you would rather overestimate the likelihood that the saber-toothed tiger would come. Why? Because it ups our adrenaline cortisol level. So when the tiger shows up, you either fight or flee. And then your cortisol and adrenaline levels go down. Fast forward to the 21st century. We are overestimating the likelihood that, this is a poll that we do with our clients. We do this poll and people anonymously rate themselves. And our brains believe that when we believe these things, our brain thinks that we're going to die. If our brain actually thinks that it's a saber-toothed tiger that I can't fail. On a rational level, you know that, but your cortisol and adrenaline levels are going through the roof. This one's a biggie. I should be doing more. Well, when I should be doing more, when our cortisol and adrenaline levels get too high, it negates our cognitive skills. So some of this belief is okay as a motivator, as an adrenalizer. But what happens is we go off the charts with them. And so one of the things that we recommend to people are, and there are a bunch of things in my book. I'm a curator, so there are many, many things that mitigate our mental chatter. Here are some of them. I know I'm going super fast, folks. I just so want you to be able to have as much of this as you can. The last practice that I'm going to get into is reach out. And I'm going to do one final poll. This is a poll that we do with my clients. Anonymous poll. What gets in the way? Oh, excuse me, that's not the poll. That's the poll. I'm reluctant to ask for help. Wait for a couple of more votes to come in. And we have 78% of you in, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll in the interest of time. And here we go. You'll look above it. So this is very typical. Where does this come from? Why are folks hesitant to ask for help? Well, we come in America, and actually in Canada too, we come from frontier roots. And our frontier roots is go it alone, cowboy, 1800s. Ralph Waldo Emerson talked about, independence and the like. It's in our ethos as a pioneering society. What the research has taught us, and I'm going to end on this note, is that asking for and offering help is a core well-being skill. Because when you go back to those wheels, how do you create capacity on those wheels? You ask for help. And there's actually something called the helper's high. Alan Lukens discovered it. That when we give help to other people, it helps our own well-being. We feel good about ourselves. So imagine with your clients in these sessions talking about within this change initiative, what's the role of asking for and offering help as a core well-being tool? So what I gave you, folks, was I gave you the very quick version. There are many other things that are part of this model, but my true hope is that you've gotten some nuggets that you can take into your clients with you. And Ursula says she can't see the results. Make sure I did that. Here are your results of that poll. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry to talk about this methodology in the context of a larger change architecture. Over to you, Terry. You're on mute, Terry.
Got it. Thank you. So this, when we did this at the art gallery, kind of laid it out at the strategic level and said, where can we put well-being activities? We realized this is actually a holistic context that can be mapped into every aspect of our change management work, primarily in the messaging areas, for sponsorship, planning, and communication. It's even important to include in the front end context of well-being training, regular training as part of the overall communication plan. What you're experiencing now is a well-being workshop that we used with the art gallery to start off the well-being journey. And so this workshop kicks it off, and then there's group coaching that follows. And that seems to be something that really does help with the stakeholder health, so that they're creating some capacity to think about, what's coming next with the change that's on the table. There's some well-being activities, as Paul pointed out, that you can include in your stakeholder engagement. And I think it becomes a flavor of your strategy and your plan. And that's really what I wanted to communicate, is that this concept is very up and coming. You've probably heard a lot about it. As you may know, we have our Lead Change conference coming up in November. So I got about 45 proposals for that to speak at that conference, and 4 of them were about change management and well-being. So it's really becoming quite a trend in our organization profession. So what I'm going to do right now is thank you for coming and turn it over to Paul for Q&A.
How many times do you hear that a day? You're on mute. I was reinforcing the monthly coaching cohorts beyond this workshop are critical to reinforce the concepts. Dossovic, thanks, Leanne. Questions, thoughts, comments? Just bring yourself off mute and ask away. This content feels like a rough sell for change programs when the results include severance of workforce. Any comments on how best to apply those in the scenario? Transparency. You name it. It's going to happen. That's the whole nature of this methodology, is to put the elephants in the room on the table and to support people through these changes. Stacy, does that answer your question? I want to make sure.
Yeah, it does. I struggle. I'm personally struggling because I'm managing a lot of programs right now that will result in significant stressors on well-being for a lot of people, including the leaders of the, that have to make the decisions about which roles to sever. And I know that that impacts their mental well-being too, feeling responsible for these outcomes for, employees that they felt quite loyal to for a long period of time.
It's hard. So Catherine says, transparency, honesty, and support go a long way for a leader to say, hey, I know this change doesn't feel good, but I will be here with you. At the end, we won't celebrate the change, but we go through it. Exactly. To name, especially to everybody, in the world post, well, we're not done with COVID, But in a post-pandemic world, welcome to the human race. This is a fundamental human process. But there are situations, Leanne says, where the initial work is currently a secret project, but people sense things. This is where this is where you get to coach your sponsors. And my take on coaching sponsors, as much transparency as you can give. Other questions or comments? And by the way, everybody, this is one point of view. There is no dogma in what I'm describing here. I'm giving you one perspective based on my experience with this methodology. So no dogma here. Where can we find or learn more? Okay, so I'm going to, oh, Rebecca, you did fantastic. Rebecca's doing this with her kids. I do this at colleges. I'm an alum of Harvard. I've done this at Harvard. I just love the fact. Thanks, Jennifer, I appreciate it. So that's me. Paul had asked what matters. I love to hear from people. This is my, we talk about well-being, purpose, health, and connection. Me and the neck brace, I could do this 24/7 and it would feed me doing workshops like this.
Paul, I don't think the slide has changed.
Oh, whoop. And I put it in the chat too.
Okay, good.
I want to hear from you all. Learn more. Go to, shameless plug, go to Amazon, buy my book. It's $18. But reach out. Yeah. Already, oh, Catherine, thank you.
Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you very much for your collaboration in doing this webinar. And I think that, I'm hoping people got a lot out of it in terms of it being an up and coming trend and some practical advice on how to employ it into their change management work. So people are looking for your LinkedIn account, Paul.
I don't have my handle on me. Just put me in, put Paul Sherman Wellbeing in, you'll find me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we'll let you guys go and grab an extra minute of your life. But thank you very much. And we're so happy that you were able to attend today.
And I'm happy too. I can stay on for a few minutes for anybody who wants to continue the dialogue.
Okay.
Happy to. You're welcome, Marisa. Thank you. Thanks, Mohammed. Thank you. Thanks, Amy, so much. Kathy, thank you. Barb, thanks.
Naomi found you.
Thank you. I should have that handy. Any other discussion items, either reactions, questions?
Paul, this is Ariana. I have a question about what's in the book and other resources. Is that the Wheel of Life tool something that we are able to utilize with clients?
So in the book, there is a paper version of it.
Okay. Okay, great. Is there any electronic version?
Not available for public consumption.
Okay.
Okay. I'm in the process of, just to be transparent, from a revenue generation standpoint, it's something that I'm working to gate right now that people can use.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Yes, Mohammed, absolutely. And how it's about sustainability. Again, it's one of those, the external circumstances aren't going to change. So how do we prevent burnout? Given the fact that change is, it's not going to stop. Nothing is going to stop. We need to learn how to be sustainable in the context. And the way you do that is by being a team and by being your best grounded self. You're welcome. See, we have some other folks on here. Anything else before we say goodbye? Well, thank you all so much for having joined us. I want to hear from you, and go forth and foster the dialogue. That's my big takeaway message. That's what you're doing in this work. You're fostering dialogue.
Thank you very much, Paul.